Chapter 10 The Dancing Goron. Hours earlier. In Castletown, they called him the Happy Mask Salesman. To many, Halvard was just a simple merchant. Almost no one would have guessed that he was interested in far more than just making an honest living. Nor would they guess that he had once been far more than a trader. Halvard preferred it this way. His life as a merchant was merely a mask. Few would have taken kindly to him if they knew of his clandestine past. Halvard disliked Castletown. If it had not been such an ideal location to continue his research into the masks that had once brought so much misfortune and misery on Hyrule, he wouldn't have bothered coming here at all. There was no point lamenting over the decision. Castletown attracted merchants from all across the 10 kingdoms. As a result, it was a trove of news, rumors, and gossip. It hadn't taken him long to discover that the Gerudo had found a mask in their desert homeland which was rumored to give its bearer great power. Well, so the rumors said. If there was any truth to them, Halvard would soon find out. It had been a most peculiar afternoon. Usually, Halvard was greeted by a steady trickle of customers, mostly children tugging on their parents' arm while pointing ecstatically at the different items displayed upon the shelves. His first customer of the afternoon, however, had not been a child, or even a Hylian, but a Gerudo asking for information about one of the masks he had researched. Halvard was reluctant to divulge the information, but the woman would not leave until she was satisfied he had told her everything he knew. As if things couldn't have gotten more mysterious, a green-clad boy, claiming to be a Kokiri, had entered his shop just as the Gerudo woman left. A Kokiri? Preposterous, he thought. Utterly ridiculous. Everyone knew the forest children never left the woods. Halvard's attempts to find a mask that would protect him from the wards guarding their realm had proven in vain. There was only one mask he knew that could protect its owner. No, that's far too dangerous, he thought. Besides, if the Gerudo King has it, those were dark signs. The sound of singing drew him away from his thoughts. The noise was coming from among a colorful array of masks arranged neatly on the shelves behind him. He quickly spotted the noisy mask. A sign beneath it read, "A mask for your true love." The object in question, a pearl with a symbol etched across its face, was reciting love poetry. It was only supposed to do that when someone held it, preferably someone who was in love with the person that had given it to them. With an exasperated sigh, Halvard grabbed the mask from the shelf and stuffed it into a drawer. The muffled poetry continued, and he made a mental note to fix it later. As he gazed at his creations neatly arranged upon the shelves, his mind drifted back to the Gerudo who'd visited his shop. Who was she, he wondered. She hadn't given him her name. She'd warned him not to trust her kind, as not all of them were on her side. It could have been paranoia on the woman's behalf, but Halvard doubted that. Just then, there was a noise from the room behind him, and it wasn't the singing mask. Somebody was in the back of his shop. Halvard jerked his head up. Before he could open his mouth, or even call the city guard for what good that would do him, someone grabbed him roughly from behind. He froze, feeling the cold bite of steel against his throat. A thief. "This is a poor way to conduct business, don't you think?" he said, trying to sound conversational, despite the fear creeping into his gut. There was a moment of shocked silence, his assailant apparently surprised by his lack of pleas for mercy. "We're looking for a mask, a soul mask." It was a woman, her accent marking her as Gerudo, but she didn't sound like the Gerudo he'd met earlier. "I know the sign outside says I sell magical masks, but I don't sell anything like that." He winced, the cold steel pressing harder against his throat, cutting skin, blood welling from the small wound. "We are aware of that," a second woman said from somewhere behind him. "But you know where the one we're looking for is, don't you?" "What are you talking about?" Halvard asked, feigning ignorance. He knew of one other soul mask and hoped it wasn't the same one they were interested in. From the corner of his eye, he saw the sleeve of a red robe as one of the women placed the scroll on the counter, unrolling it. Staring up at him was a picture of a mask. With its large eyes and 3 spikes protruding from either side, Halbert recognized the heart-shaped monstrosity instantly. Of all the masks he had studied, this was perhaps the most dangerous and sinister. There was only one other mask that rivaled its power: the skull mask. The same item that was currently in the Gerudo King's possession. The mask staring up at Halbert from the weathered pages of the old tome could bend the earth, elements, and magic to its will, even over vast distances. Its ability to control the mind was unparalleled. The spirit in the mask was also said to be rather insane. According to the few stories about it, Majora, created by a Sheikah tribe whose namesake it bore, possessed multiple personalities and was incredibly dangerous. It had, after all, killed its creators, though Halbert could not have said what events transpired to bring about their fall. He gulped at the sight of Majora's image. "Do you know how dangerous that thing is?" "No more dangerous than our master, I'm sure. It needs a strong mind to control, and he already has that," the Gerudo said. "No, find it yourself. I will have nothing to do with this." Halbert's voice shook, his fear mounting. Once, he would never have allowed himself to be caught in such a way. "I should have kept a knife on me." "Majora can only be recovered by someone who wants to find it, but has no desire for its power," the woman told him. "Otherwise, we would gladly retrieve it ourselves." "I will not help you," Halbert repeated, coldly this time. "How disappointing. I was worried we would run into this little difficulty," the woman with the blade said coolly. "Perhaps we need to give you a little encouragement." She leaned closer to his ear. "If you refuse to help us, we will destroy your precious research and kill your family. Don't worry, you'll still be very much alive when we finish. Nobody refuses Ganondorf." Halbert's blood went cold. The Gerudo couldn't possibly know where his family lived. "You have a wife and 3 children, 2 girls and a boy, correct? It would be a terrible tragedy if something happened to them. We know where to find them." The words cut him more deeply than the knife could have, and any courage he'd felt earlier fled in a single heartbeat. How could they possibly know where his family lived? He fought off a wave of dizziness as he realized they must have been watching him for a while. When had he become so careless? "All right, I'll do it," Halbert gasped. Panic clawed at his mind as he thought of his wife's sweet smile, the laughter of his 2 young daughters, his son shouting happily as he played with a wooden sword. No, he wouldn't let the Gerudo hurt them. They'd pay for this threat. "I'll help you, but I need to find a way to enter the woods first. The gateway to the realm Majora was cast into is somewhere in there. I will need time to find it." "The wards protecting the forest are failing. You will have no trouble." Failing? That was impossible. Those wards had existed for eons. Nothing could break them. The Gerudo didn't give him time to ponder this as she added, "We will give you time to find the mask. You have until the festival of the goddesses to find it. Don't try running. Nobody runs from Ganondorf. Remember that." The woman released the blade, and Halbert gripped the table for support, his legs refusing to support his weight. "Oh, and if you consider breathing so much as a whisper of us to anyone else, we will find you," the woman threatened. Halbert looked up to get a glimpse of the Gerudo. He only saw the edge of her cloak as she disappeared into the back room, her companion somewhere ahead of her. He knew the route they would take to escape, climbing into the alley through the window. He took a deep breath and brought a hand to his neck. The cut stung, and his fingers were stained with blood. It was time to leave. The next day, the green blades of grass shimmered in the afternoon sun as Link stood on the bridge leading across the Zora River. Impa stood by his side, while Navi perched on his shoulder. Off to the east, the volcano rose into the sky, a thin cloud of dust blanketing its peak. Looks welcoming, Link thought. Once, he dreamed of adventuring outside the forest, like in the stories the great Decatry and Saria would often tell him. Sometimes, the Kokiri would act out those same tales, while wearing masks and dancing around a fire. Link missed those stories. In them, the hero always won. There was never any question of whether or not he might die, or see things that he could not unsee. Adventuring up a mountain might have made him giddy with excitement over a month ago, but it didn't now. The previous afternoon, Impa had led him back to the Silver Mare. The innkeeper knew Impa and apologized profusely for letting Link escape. Much to Link's displeasure, he ended up in a room with only a tiny window, too small for him to squeeze through. Impa returned the following morning, and Link rode with her towards Kakariko. Malin had introduced him to riding a horse, but Link still found riding upon the back of a beast with a mind of its own unsettling. As the morning wore on, he became more comfortable with it, but was still afraid the horse might take off without a thought for the two people on its back. Impa was quiet for most of their journey, keeping a watchful eye on the surroundings. The people they passed on the road often kept their gaze downcast or gave Impa a wide berth, some making signs with their hands. Why are they doing that? Link asked, noticing that Impa scowled whenever this happened. It's a sign meant to protect against evil spirits, Impa explained. At Link's questioning look, she added, Not that it does anything. I have far more effective means of protecting us than a little finger-pointing. She tapped the sword strapped to her side. It did make her look more intimidating than usual, and it was little wonder that people were nervous around her. They lapsed into a silence, Link lost in thought, listening to the rhythmic thud of hooves and the gentle sigh of the wind. They didn't go much further before they stopped suddenly, Link looking up to see Impa sweeping her eyes across the surrounding countryside. I think this will have to do. You're leaving me here? Link asked, suddenly not liking that idea. These roads are well patrolled, especially now, Impa assured him, dismounting and helping Link to clamber out of the saddle. You'll be safe, and I have something for you. She reached into her pocket and held out her ring, a single weeping eye etched into its center. This marks you as one of my own. So long as you have it, you will be identified as a member of my clan. I do not normally bestow this honor on Hylians, but, given the circumstances, I think it will benefit you. Your clan? Link asked, taking the ring and twirling it between thumb and forefinger. Yes. What's left of it, at least. She grimaced. Abruptly, she glared at him, noticing that he was still staring at the ring. Well, stop gawping and put it on. Is it magical? Link asked, curious. No, Impa said testily. It will not make you invisible or anything like that. It will simply mean that some shops and inns will not charge you full price, and most will think twice about harming you. It's considered bad luck to harm a Shaker, which would be right so long as I have anything to say about it, and after what you experienced in Castletown, I feel it's necessary. Link felt a rush of gratitude, followed by confusion. How did she know he'd nearly been mugged? Had she questioned one of the guards? Link slipped the ring on, half expecting to feel different somehow. Now that's done, we'd best get you on your way. That is Kakariko Village. Impa pointed in the direction of the town. You'll find the path to Death Mountain there. She nodded to the volcano. I suggest you wait until morning to start your ascent. It would not be wise to clamber around Death Mountain in the dark. Why is it called Death Mountain? Link asked. It was not exactly the most encouraging name, certainly not when he happened to be headed right for it. Maybe whoever called it that died while trying to reach the summit, and their ghost was feeling rather unimaginative, Navi suggested. Link chuckled, but quickly stopped at Impa's disapproving look. She passed him a small pouch full of rupees. He stared at it, puzzled. You will need supplies, Impa explained. I trust you can help him with that, Navi. Navi nodded. Of course, I have been to Kakariko before. I am glad. That will make your task easier, Impa said. Her gaze settled back on Link, and he shifted his feet, finding her stern demeanor rather unsettling. I will send a bird to Darunia to let him know that you are coming. I hope his pet does not eat it this time. What? Link gave her a bemused look, not understanding what she meant. Darunia has a pet dragon, Impa explained, sounding as though it was quite ordinary to have an enormous scaly lizard as a pet when it could cause an entire kingdom to fall in flames. A dragon, Link breathed in wonder. The Kokiri didn't regard dragons with much esteem due to their tendency to set wooden objects on fire, and what little they knew of the creatures came from stories. Yes, Impa said. It guards Death Mountain, but it would appear that Ganondorf slipped past it on his way there. Does it eat people? Link blurted out. As much as he would love to see a dragon, he didn't like the idea of becoming its next meal. It will only attack you if Darunia tells it to. At Link's dismayed expression, Link amended this with, Rest assured, he won't do that. Link didn't think that was much of a reassurance. How long will it take to get there? He asked. About a day, if you're quick, Impa answered before she glanced back the way they'd come. We have been idle long enough. I would accompany you, but I must return before my absence is noted. May the goddesses speed you on your journey. Impa turned and headed back towards Castle Town. His heart pounding with trepidation at the journey ahead of him, Link watched as she rode into the distance. He and Navi were once again alone. Knowing firsthand just how dangerous Hyrule could be, Link felt a sickening unease clench his gut. At least he wasn't far from the village. Even knowing that the road was protected by guards, he was unable to stop the welling sense of dread that rose in his chest. With difficulty, Link ignored it, not wanting Navi to think he was scared. We should get moving, Navi suggested, urging Link away from his thoughts. Best we try and get there before nightfall. Yeah, Link said, trying to sound enthused. He didn't want to sound dispirited, so he heeded her words and took off at a sprint towards Kakariko. Desperate to quickly reach the village, Link ran as fast as his legs would carry him. As exhaustion crept over him, his desire to be behind the walls of somewhere that offered protection from the creatures of the night was all that kept him from stopping. Small pinpricks of light soon dotted the evening sky. Link gave a start when a wolf howled in the distance. Drawing his sword, he spun around, only to upset the bay horse pulling along a wagon behind him. What are you doing, kid? You trying to scare my horse to death? The man driving the wagon yelled angrily. Link was still looking around for any sign of the creature that had howled. Sorry, he mumbled, stepping to the side as the wagon driver pulled his horse under control. The driver grumbled under his breath and continued towards the gates of Kakariko. It was just a wolf, Link, Navi said. I'm sure of it. Ulfos sound a little different. Link was going to remind Navi that his hearing was not as good as hers, but decided not to, angrily berating himself for getting so jumpy. It's all right, Link, Navi said as she noticed his vehement muttering. You'll probably be jumpy for a little while, but nobody would blame you. Link sighed and sheathed his sword before trudging along the path to the village. Thankfully, nobody else had seen him. Kakariko was a small hamlet, built snugly into the rocky foothills of Death Mountain, a tall wall of grey stone shielding it from the outside world. 2 long rows of brick and wooden houses with slate roofs lined the wide street. The windmill at the far end of this road overlooked a small, empty square with nothing but a stone well at its centre. It didn't seem to be in use at the moment, for a stone sill plugged the well's mouth. Link thought this was peculiar and noted that Navi didn't answer him when he asked about it. He didn't press her. Instead, he ventured down one of the small dirt paths that branched off the main road. The houses along these narrow streets were smaller brick buildings with thatched roofs. The village was much quieter than Hyrule's capital and held a much more tranquil air, which Link liked. The chatter of insects reminded him of home and the ranch, his chest throbbing dully as memories tugged at him. Cookfires, laughter, Saria, friends, hunting with Bryn and the others. With a small shake, only a concerned look from Navi, Link focused on his surroundings. Now wasn't the time to get lost in his memories. He decided to scope out the village first, wanting to know the layout of the land before he found somewhere to stay. He wasn't tired either, and therefore he didn't need a bed yet. He soon discovered a dirt switchback path which led up the steep slopes of Death Mountain. A second path branched off from this, leading around a bend and cutting a swath through the rocky hill. Link soon found the way along the track blocked by a wall and a gate that was too tall to see over. Kakariko Graveyard, Navi said, sounding strangely troubled. There's a stone door on the other side that's built into the side of the hill. It always gives me the creeps. Why? Link asked curiously. Shadow magic emanates from beyond the doorway. Something to do with Ganondorf? No, Navi replied, pursing her lips and staring at the gate. This feels different. Link could see little of the graveyard beyond the gate, but an icy chill trickled down his spine as he caught a glimpse of it in between the gate's iron bars. It felt as though the spirits of the dead were watching them, whispering as they contemplated the intruders at the edge of their resting place. Let's go and find somewhere to stay, Link suggested. The graveyard did not look like a particularly good idea, even if it did keep them away from prying eyes. Navi approved, and together they headed back to the village. It took them a while to find the inn. Navi might have been here before, but the town had changed over the years, or so she said. Link accidentally wandered into someone's house twice before a tirade of angry yells sent him scurrying back out the door. Really? What did you expect? You can't just go walking into people's homes like that, Navi chastised him after the second time. I told you we should ask someone. You know what? I'll ask. Finally, after a few directions and a guard who shook his head, murmuring about completely irresponsible parents and wandering children, they found the inn. It was a 2-story wooden building with a sign out the front that featured a picture of a Goron clutching a pint of ale. Navi read the words beneath the picture. The Dancing Goron. Looks like this is it, she said with an air of relief. Link pushed the door open, and a blast of warm air rushed out to meet him. He stood there for a moment, before an angry yell from a table nearby demanded that he shut the door and stop letting the cold in. Link stepped inside, his eyes drawn to a warm fire crackling merrily in the hearth. Ripples of jovial laughter came from a group of men playing cards at a table near the fire, and, from atop a platform, a flutist played a lively tune. Despite the inn's name, there were no Gorons to be seen. Nobody paid much notice to Link, except for a woman carrying a platter of food. Well, aren't you a cute little thing, she purred, looking down at the boy. Link felt the heat in his cheeks rise. The woman took in the sword behind Link and gawked. Looks like you're a fighter too. Got the scars to match it. You usually walk around with your pa's dagger. It's mine, Link told her. It was given to me. A gift, I see. You take a wrong turn or something. We're after a room, Navi intervened, and the woman looked at her. A talking pet fairy? I haven't seen that before. Navi glared angrily at the word pet. The woman did not seem to notice, as she nodded to the counter opposite the entrance. Master Everett will sort you out. Master Everett was standing behind the counter. He was cleaning a glass, but from the state of the rag he was using, Link doubted it was going to get any cleaner. You lost? The man asked gruffly, scowling impatiently at the Kokiri. I'm after a room for tonight, Link told him. Master Everett seemed a little surprised at the confidence in Link's voice. He saw the sword and shield behind Link, and his eyes widened further. How many? He asked, quickly resuming his gruff countenance. 2, Link replied, including Navi. Ember had paid for his stay at the Silver Mare, so Link wasn't quite sure what to expect. Even with the chic ring adorning his finger, he was still not entirely sure how that was going to help him. 1 bed is fine, Navi added hastily. Link cast her a quizzical look before realizing his mistake. Just 1. Your parents got you sleeping on the floor or something? Everett asked. I presume they're staying with you. No, the great Decatree was my father. He's... Link trailed off, not wanting to acknowledge the truth that he had been so long trying to deny since leaving the woods. He got no sympathy from the innkeeper. You trying to be funny or something? He asked. No, I'm a Kokiri. Master Everett looked at him as though he had just sprouted an extra head. Okay, Kokiri, huh? Right, and my pa's is Aura. Everett scoffed and rolled his eyes. Link scowled at the man, suddenly reminded of Meadow. Only this person was a lot bigger. Everett smirked, seeing the look on Link's face, and then sighed. Fine. I won't say no to a customer who can pay, even if you are young. If you have 20 rupees, I'll give you a room for the night. If you want food, that will cost you an extra 10. Link handed over 2 red rupees. In exchange, the man handed 2 blue rupees over the counter. As he did, the man's eyes flickered over the ring on Link's hand. Keep that one, he said, pushing one of the red rupees back across the counter. The man was staring, looking Link up and down. You know, boy, that ring better not be stolen. It'll be bad luck for you if it is. It's not stolen, Link piped up. It was given to me. I see. Well, we'll know the truth of that soon enough. Everett stood straighter, brushing his apron. Come along then, I'll show you to your room. Snatching up his red rupee, Link let the innkeeper direct him to a room upstairs at the far end of the hall. It looked like the room he had stayed in at Lon Lon Ranch, except for the animal skin rug, which resembled the hide of a deer. The seemingly impractical animal fur made Link feel ill. The Kokiri would have considered it a waste and a wicked thing to do to an animal. Navi left through the window to see if she could find one of her kin who dwelt around Death Mountain. It sounded far away, but what would have taken hours of climbing for Link was only a short flight for Navi. Despite her promise that she wouldn't be long, Link felt very much alone without her. He nearly jumped out of his skin when somebody knocked on the door. Link opened it, gripping his sword protectively in one hand. A boy stood on the other side, bearing a tray with a steaming bowl of hot soup. When he saw Link's sword, the boy almost dropped the tray, his eyes going wide. Sorry, I wasn't going to hurt you, Link tried to sound reassuring, quickly relaxing his sword arm. The boy scurried over to the table opposite the bed, set the bowl down on it, and then tore out faster than he'd come in. I really am getting skittish. He had half expected a Gerudo to come bursting through the door, but it was unlikely they would get through the common room or into the busy kitchen without anyone noticing. Link ate his stew so slowly that it was cold by the time he finished. Then, he sat on the bed, his thoughts drifting aimlessly like a leaf tossed on a lake. Through heavy-lidded eyes, he listened to the notes of the flute drifting up from the common room below. Then, a lute played a slow tune, and he could hear someone singing, their voice muffled. He wished he could just slip out of the room and watch the festivities. Surely there was no harm in that. He eyed the window, wondering where Navi was. What was taking her so long? He sat on the bed and stretched. Maybe he could go downstairs for a short time. Tap, tap, tap. The noise brought Link back to full awareness, even though it was faint. The thought of Gerudo coming into the room surged back into his mind, unbidden and unwelcome. Then he realized the noise was just Navi. She was scowling at the closed window, her hands on her hips. Link's heart soared with relief, and he opened the window a crack. What did you shut me out for? I nearly flew into the glass, Navi scolded him before taking flight and landing on the table. She eyed the rest of the cold stew before Link offered it to her. Sorry, I only had the window closed because I was worried about anything getting in, Link told her as she settled into her food. Navi sighed. I doubt anything will trouble us here. Besides, I found one of the fairies I was looking for, and she said she'd get her kin to look out for any trouble. She hesitated before adding, I also found out that the Gorons are not happy because Ganondorf has been threatening them. Now, he's placed a curse on the creatures that inhabit a cave they call Dodonga's Cavern. Another curse? Link's insides felt like they twisted themselves into a knot. Surely, the Gorons would be dealing with the problem. If they were the same size as the creature Link had seen in Castletown's market, he reasoned that they were more than capable of dealing with any creatures that Ganondorf had cursed. Well, let's just hope the Gorons don't decide they need our help too, Link said, lying down on the bed to sleep. He tossed his hat towards the cupboard at the foot of the bed, missing and almost hitting Navi as she went to fetch it. Thanks, Navi muttered, scooping the cap up from the floor and putting it on the top of the cupboard before resting upon it. Link put out the candle, feeling a twinge of unease as he lay back down on the bed. The talk of curses had stirred his mind, quenching any thought of sleep. The sounds of talking and laughter floated up to the floorboards, not helping. Eventually, Link did fall asleep, but it was far from restful. Dark memories stirred. Like mud in a churning river current, they rose and blighted his dreams. Splintered wood flew through the air as the door to the room crashed open. Face covered in a red veil, curved blade in hand, a Gerudo stared down at Link as she charged into the room. 2 Wolfos prowled astride her, snarling menacingly. Link tried to move, but his muscles would not obey. Paralyzed, he looked into the Gerudo's eyes. The assassin strode forward, curved sword raised. The air around her shimmered and coalesced, warping as the Gerudo changed form and took on the appearance of someone else. The desert man, Ganondorf. He laughed coldly, opening his fist, revealing a gem on the palm of his glove. A ball of fire erupted in front of the gem, streaking through the air. The bed burst into flames, and the desert man laughed. Link screamed. White-hot pain lanced through his skull as he was abruptly torn from his dream. His head throbbed violently, and for a second, all Link could feel was terror. "Link! Link! Are you all right?" Navi called. Link looked down to see her staring at him worriedly. Link's heart was beating hard in his chest, feeling like it desperately wanted to get out, and it took a moment to catch his breath before he could even try to reply. "Are you okay?" Navi asked again, flying up beside him. She gave a small gasp. "You're bleeding." Link touched the back of his head, which stung painfully. His fingers came away wet and sticky, and when he looked with the aid of Navi's glow, he saw blood on his fingers. "What?" he stammered, still trying to figure out why his head hurt so much. Navi seemed to notice the look of terror on his face. "It's all right. It's only a small cut." Link rose from the bed and stumbled over to the wash basin. He dumped most of the contents of a pitcher into it and soaked the edge of a towel. Despite Navi's disgruntled remarks of disgust, he used this to sponge the blood from his scalp and then tossed the towel into a corner of the room. He poured the last of the water into a cup, gulped it down thirstily, and then returned to his bed. "You okay?" Navi asked when he finished. Link nodded, slowly lying back down. Sweat had soaked the pillow, making it useless. Throwing it onto the floor, he curled up uncomfortably on the damp mattress. Was it too much to ask for his life to go back to the way it had been? He just wanted to go home. He missed Saria, his friends. Heck, he even missed Mido and his band of cronies. He sniffled, burying his face into the sheets as he began to cry. He didn't want Navi to hear him. He was supposed to be strong, courageous, just like the heroes in those stories of old. But he wasn't. He was just a kid, a Kokiri, and more frightened than he had ever been in his life. Earlier that evening, Amira was dead. Nibiru's mind was still reeling in shock from the news her attendants had given her. The girl was not supposed to be at Lon Lon. She was young by Gerudo standards, and inexperienced. After quickly questioning her attendants, it became apparent that Ganondorf had sent her and 2 other Gerudo to raid the ranch. Amira had not been supposed to be among their number. 2 of her warriors had gone to dispatch the shaking guards near the ranch, leaving Amira the task of stealing the stone. When they realized she had been caught, they had fled. Ganondorf did not turn around from the balcony of his room when Nibiru walked in. He was gazing out at the starlit sky, pensive. Nibiru swallowed, forcing herself to keep calm and remain straight-faced despite her fury. "Nibiru, I was wondering when you would come. I was very sorry to hear about Amira," Ganondorf said, still not turning around. He did not sound very sorry, and that tone only infuriated Nibiru more. "Why did you send her?" Nibiru asked, barely keeping the anger from her voice. "Each Gerudo must earn their place among the ranks of our warriors. It was past time she faced her test," answered Ganondorf. Each Gerudo had to undergo 7 trials in the Spirit Temple before they could wield a spear or sword and be recognized as a warrior. There were no other tests after that. "You sent her to punish me, didn't you?" Nibiru asked heatedly. Because I failed to make sure the Kokiri Emerald was retrieved. Hardly, Ganondorf replied icily. You disappoint me, my love. I thought you trusted me. My love. Nibiru's anger boiled at those two words. It had been a long time since she had looked into his eyes and thought of him as that. You sent my sister to her death, and you had the height to call me your love. Ganondorf turned, regarding her casually. His two guards stood silently on either side of the door, neither of them giving any indication that they were listening to the conversation. We have come so far, Nibiru. Why do you doubt me now? He asked coolly. Because you never would have sacrificed a Gerudo to punish another, she felt like saying, but decided against it. I trusted you before you took that damned mask, she spat, her rage barely contained. What has it done to you? It was a gift, Nibiru. A gift to give our race hope. Hope? How is risking a war with 9 kingdoms bringing us hope? Nibiru almost yelled. Ganondorf's expression remained as cold as ever. The 10th kingdom, the Blins, would rally to Ganondorf's cause, if only because they saw the deity in the skull mask as their god. It is a war we can win, Nibiru. Once the Triforce is in our hands, the Hylians won't stand a chance. Ganondorf walked over to a chessboard on the table by a fireplace, the pieces neatly arranged in their starting positions. He picked up a figurine of a Hylian king, the White King, and stared at it thoughtfully. Even if this plan of yours does work, all of Hyrule's neighbors will turn on us, Nibiru responded, watching as Ganondorf turned the white marble figurine in his fingers. They will fall, Ganondorf replied. He placed the figurine back on its starting square, still examining the board thoughtfully. I feared you might be too soft for this, Nibiru. You object to killing a child, and I'm quite sure you would have told whoever you ordered to retrieve the stone not to kill that boy. Soft? How dare he call me soft? Nibiru barely managed to keep her face straight. The Gerudo are not murderers, Nibiru replied, her restraint breaking as fury seeped into her words. We do not go murdering children in their beds, and we do not go killing each other to punish the failures of others. I admit, this is distasteful work, Nibiru, Ganondorf said absently. Sacrifices must be made, however, if we are to succeed, even if it means doing that which we would rather not do. Besides, you need not concern yourself with the boy now. Nibiru felt a chill. What have you done to him? Nothing. Yet. Tell your women not to concern themselves with him any more. Nibiru stood there, confused. Why? She questioned. He has gone to find the other 2 spiritual stones. Though he doesn't know it, the Sheikah will be watching him closely. I will wait to see if he retrieves them, and, if he does, I will obtain them myself from his broken corpse. There was a fire in those eyes now. Nibiru almost flinched at the pure determination and madness swelling within them. I know you spoke to Impa. If I discover that you have uttered so much as a word of this to her, you will be punished, Ganondorf said, his tone growing dangerous. You would not dare lay a finger on me! Nibiru found she was unable to contain her rage any longer as she shouted those words, but she was unsure whether or not it was from her lack of privacy or his indifferent demeanor. How could he know? They had been alone in Impa's chambers, or so she had thought. There had been no raven over the balcony, or any other kind of bird that she had noticed, that Ganondorf could have used as a spy. Ganondorf regarded her icily. See that I do not have to. I said we would have to make sacrifices, and it would pain me greatly if I had to make you one of them. Don't fail me again, or double-cross me, and I will put this behind us. Damn you, Ganondorf, Nibiru thought. Damn you to hell. She turned her back on her king, and strode out of the room, not even bothering to shut the door behind her. Ganondorf dismissed his guards with an angry command. They nodded, and wordlessly left the chamber, shutting the door behind them. Ganondorf turned, and swung his hand at the chessboard with an angry snarl. The pieces scattered across the floor, clattering as they hit the ground. He regarded the White King on the floor for a moment, and then crushed it with the heel of his boot. How dare Nibiru betray me, he thought angrily, as he strode back towards the door to the balcony. "You should have killed her," a voice whispered in his mind. Ganondorf froze, regarding the voice for a moment. It was the spirit within the mask he had taken from the cave in the Gerudo Valley. "I have another idea," he announced to the empty room. Even as he looked, 2 cloaked figures on brooms descended out of the evening sky to land on the balcony. One stumbled off their broom as they landed. They were draped in identical robes of black, but their uncovered heads made them distinguishable. One had white hair, while the other's hair was a fiery red. Their haggard faces resembled crumpled parchment. There were bags under their eyes, crooked noses, and large, bulbous eyes. It looked like they had been experimenting with magic surgery and failed abysmally. The result was not in the least bit attractive. "Really, Kotek," the red-haired witch, known as Coombe, began as her twin nearly fell over her own broom. "You are becoming clumsy in your old age." "I'm the same age as you, Coombe," Kotek snapped irritably as she picked up her broom. "You have gone senile if you can't remember your own age." "I have not," Kotek rounded on her sister. "Don't make me hit you with my broom." "Shut up, Coombe, before the guards hear us." "I do hate to interrupt your most amusing arguments, and I do miss them dearly," Ganondorf said dryly. "I have asked you here to do me a favor." "Of course," Kotek responded. "We would have been here sooner, but Coombe—" "What Kotek is trying to say," Coombe interrupted loudly, "is sorry we're late." "What is this favor you want?" Coombe asked. "It would seem that Nibiru may need to be reminded of where her loyalties lie. I want you to spy on her. When I send her back to the fortress in 3 days, for I fear this has been overly taxing for her, follow her every move." Ganondorf replied in an icy tone colder than any spell Kotek could conjure. "Deal with her as you see fit." "Isn't she your wife?" Coombe asked. "Queen of the Gerudo. I know she cannot bear children anymore, but—" "That no longer concerns me," Ganondorf cut in. All emotion left his voice as he spoke quietly. "Not anymore. If she turns traitor, kill her